Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another exciting episode of Let's Talk Comics. I am your host, Jim Viscardi, and this is the official Image Comics podcast that goes one-on-one with your favorite creators in the business to find out how they got in, why they got in, what they're still doing in comics, and what they have coming up. Today's guest needs no introduction, but he is going to get one anyway. This is a writer who made us fall in love with Britpop. This is someone who made us believe pop stars could be gods. He has also pulled us headfirst into a cursed role-playing game and so much more. Sure, he also spent a bunch of time at Marvel, redefining the Young Avengers, shaking up the X-Men line. But what he's got coming up here at Image, is so much fun. He is Kieron Gillen. And Kieron is, I'm not going to lie, and I knew I was gonna set something up talking to Kieron. I was a little intimidated because Kieron is so thoughtful when it comes to talking about comics. And I have loved his work for a really, really long time. And so to get to talk to him specifically about like process and how he works out his ideas and where some of that stuff comes from really has made this a really fun episode to put together. And so, of course, we're going to talk about a bunch of his previous stuff, but we are going to talk more specifically about The Return of Die. This is a book that he did with Stephanie Hans that was loved by a ton of folks, and so to bring that back is a lot of fun for him, for her, for us, and then we have got to talk about his latest ongoing, the Power Fantasy. The Power Fantasy is about to kick off its third arc, depending on when you're listening to this. That's when it's kicking off, and this is things that he couldn't necessarily do in work for hire work, right? And so the world building he does in the Power Fantasy and how he has it mapped out, how he works with Caspar Wijngaard is great. But beyond all of that, beyond all of the talk we do about his works, we get into some nitty gritty on what drives him to continue to do comics and why he loves the medium and how everything that he had done prior to really breaking in really kind of shapes how he goes about the work. So I'm gonna stop there and just kind of jump right into it. You know the business. If you want to support the show, take a screenshot, share it on social, tag Image, tag Kieron, tag me. We'll share it. Leave a review on iTunes, leave a rating on Spotify. All right, if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's talk comics. Kieron, welcome.
Lovely to be here. Honestly, when you say the rawest writing, I just think, does it mean more typos? It's like,
yeah, sure.
My editors are really good. Just it's like one of the things I also used to be a journalist before all of this.
Right.
I learned that I really work well. But I need an editor. Like I've nothing but love and respect for editors in that way. In that whatever I am needs to be tamed to some degree.
So do you? I have to imagine. I'll just kind of jump right into it. In using an editor, there are a number of ways folks I think utilize editors in for various projects and things like that. But for you, what are some of the most important things when working with an editor that you feel, obviously like keeping you, clean and neat and all that jazz and on time, but like what are some of the other things that you find editors super helpful with for your stuff?
Actually, the weird thing is I'm really I'm good at deadlines. Like it's one of the things I got from being a journalist in that, especially when it's Marvel editors stopped giving me deadlines. So because they knew that I would just get the script when it was needed. As in I was very hyper aware of the structure of the books and I would always get it there. So that bit's fine. What I kind of need is, it's like it's kind of a sense check. It's this kind of like, Chrissy, when Katie West took over from Chrissy Williams, who was my wife, who also edited Die and Wicked Divine. She kind of described the job as making sure everything that Kieron is inside Kieron's head is actually outside Kieron's head. So it's this kind of like this, and it's like these almost Socratic questions in terms of like, what's that? Oh, it's Columbo. It's the, what do you mean by that? And, just the one more thing. And that kind of prodding. And that's the thing, making sure that it is there and sensible and coherent. And that's the one. Or I've got a problem with attention to detail. Like I've got ADHD and that means I miss stuff. And it's stuff like both typos. Like there's a kind of fundamental just skip. If anyone's read my newsletter, you'll see me. I just skip words occasionally. It's that kind of stuff. But also like, just a few things like that. So that's the close eye on that.
Right.
And depending, depends. Yeah, with Chrissy, it's much more Chrissy because Chrissy was a poet. Chrissy was very much a tight line editor. Me and Chrissy argued almost every line in Die, which was hilarious. As you have a rule of there's no pillow talk about comics was the basic rule in the the bedroom is a sacred chamber. Yeah, of course, and Chrissy was doing Golden Rage. Like, in fact, just finished the second Golden Rage right now, so it's kind of it's a very comics forward house in that way. But yeah, it's like so. Yeah, that first listener, first somebody to call me on my nonsense. That's a good way, and that kind of like, does this make any sense, Kieran?
No, that's. I mean, look at that's like I think that's. To me, I feel like a good editor doesn't. A good editor, right? They always say like a good editor is is almost invisible or whatever, and I think you don't like see the actual kind of work that goes into the breaking story and under just making sure to pick things up that goes into that, and I love seeing that. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, the question that I ask everyone up front. I know you've talked about your previous work in journalism, but was journalism, or was it even journalism at first for you, and then obviously later was that always the goal for you, or like in what alternate universe is there an alternate universe that Kieron Gillen is a vet or something?
There's a bit of when I was like 10 or 11, I used to want to be prime minister, and then I decided I didn't want everyone to hate me. Then I decided I wanted to be a fireman. So maybe I could have been a fireman. No, basically my dad was a builder, so I worked building sites when I was a teenager, like not like all the time, but I spent my time doing physical labor. No, I'm no good at it. So almost my entire life has been a desperate attempt to find a way to not do real work. Like I work really, people kind of like know how hard I work, but there's elements of like a complete fear of knowing what real jobs are and how bad I am at them. So there's that. Okay. I remember, my dad told me, he always fancied a lawyer as a son. And he told me and my brother this, and we would completely have been lawyers, There's a bit of me likes, like I said, the problem with the attention to detail, but there's other things about being a lawyer, the gamer part of me, you know what I mean? All that. Right. That's kind of career, that a lawyer is absolutely a feasible idea. I mean, I'm a trained scientist. I did a biology degree. I worked in a lab. I researched schizophrenia. I dissected human brains.
Holy moly.
Not that after they were dead, obviously.
Yeah, well,
Christ, it just sounds like a horror story. I mean, and so I completely done science. Is there the Dennis Camp? Is he also a biologist? I forget. But yeah, there's I did that, and I realized, no, I really don't like this. I love science, but I don't want to do it as a career because I lack. It reminded me of working in a lab. Reminded me far too much about like working in a factory but smaller scale. It was very repetitive work, and there's moments of like realizing no one knew about this until I did it, and it seemed if you climbed the thing and became much more, you become a manager. And so neither of those things really appealed as much as science did. I mean, science journalism, I could have stayed in journalism. I'm a game designer now in the side, but there's an alternate history where I went to my degree was in Bath because I messed up my A levels, and not messed up. I didn't get what I was meant to get AAA and I got 2 Bs and a D. I just underperformed in that way. So I went to my second choice university, which is Bath, which is where where all the games publishers are based, the video games magazines, including my favorite magazine, Amiga Power. And I started working for Amiga Power when I was at university. I paid my way for my second year at university by writing for them. So you know what I mean? So that. But in fact, my first choice was Nottingham. Now, Nottingham is Games Workshop. Nottingham is the British games scene in the small there, and Rock City and other stuff like that. So if I was in that, would I have gone that hole? You know what I mean? I really don't.
There are really plenty of alternate realities.
I'm a big old nerd, basically. I think it's hard to imagine me doing anything real work. But like, you never know.
So then really what, considering that backstory, how then do you end up in comics?
Oh, it's a very joke. It's like, Chrissy's like, Chrissy comes from a more middle class background than me. And so like, she's got these lovely friends who are very like nice, lovely people. But like, I'm really not allowed to speak to their kids in that kind of, like, oh yeah, I played video games for a living and then I got bored of that and I started writing comics instead. The idea that is a career path is not the sort of thing you should tell people. It wasn't really a plan, in terms of comics, because I wasn't into comics as a kid. I mean, I read comics as a kid.
Right.
But there was no comic shop in Stafford where I grew up. So like, I was always comics curious. I read like the music press and the games press because they always covered comics in the 80s. Like they had, they're covering like Watchmen and Dark Knight's Returns and all, Mouse and everything else. I knew I should care about comics more. Not that I didn't care, as I should know more. That was the curiosity.
Okay.
And I just picked up Watchmen when I was 21, weirdly on the way to my working in that aforementioned working in a library year. Picked up Watchmen on the way there, read it. It was the only book I had apart from some really heavy philosophy texts for a month. So I just read Watchmen like 7 or 8 times back to back. And that was my obsession. So like for about 4 or 5 years, I was into 1 or 2 Vertigo trades a year, very casual, that kind of person. And at 25, I discovered like it's the Warren Ellis stuff actually, which sits very difficultly now in that kind of way. Especially I came into the WEF. The WEF was my introduction to the rest of comics. And then I came in hard. Right. So basically I went from September 2099, it's like 99 to 2000.
Right.
Suddenly into this. And by next Bristol Comic Con, I go there, I write my first script there, and then I immediately start being on the scene. So I come in really hard. And it's weird to think, I go into comics properly as a real coming every week sort of person. 2000. And by 2009, in the same decade, I'm writing 4. That is a weird... Right. You know what I mean? Like
that. I mean, that's a very, but like that's a very fast trajectory.
And I feel bad about
that sense. And so, like,
it's tricky in that way because I'm very aware that it's like say Fraction. Like it was obviously a mate. Fraction's a lifer. All of it. There's many people at Image who are complete lifers. Also, I'm a late convert, and I was myself thinking about like I was raised Catholic, and people who convert to Catholicism are very different from people who are born Catholic. Because it's like you've chosen to join this party. So it's a bit like I'm aware. I've got a sort of a Labrador approach to the form. Like when I go on, it's like, what is this stuff? The metaphor I always use is like, imagine like knowing music exists, but not really knowing music until you were 25. And suddenly 25, there's shops full of this stuff. And there's 100 years of pop music I can buy. What? That. So the idea of a whole new universe to fall into at the age of 25, that was me in comics. And I came in hard. I remember the first thing I posted on the forums, because I lurked for quite a while because I want to make sure I was right. I'm not somebody who walks into a room and makes noise. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Let's see if I understand. And my first post was, since the 9-panel grid was so, important in the 80s and defined so much stuff, why is such an uncommon form now? So like, I'm literally the first thing I post is a formalist question about 9-panel grids, like the most nerdy nonsense, and that's kind of me, big old nerd.
So then, okay, so let's expand upon that. So then, where do you go and what do you do to then to learn and understand how comics are made?
Yeah,
because I have to imagine, just given even your science background and you being able to kind of break down and reverse engineer some of that stuff is probably very different than, maybe some other folks who are just like, I love to write. And so I wrote, right? So for you, when it comes to how do I do this, what did that look like?
It's like, I've always been autodidactic. The reason I did a science degree is because you don't really know if you like science until you do it at degree level. Because it's not really, and I discovered, no, I don't. And I didn't do an English degree because I'm like, what do I need an English degree for? I'm going to read books. Like absolute teenage arrogance. But that's a bit me. I'm autodidactic. I just do stuff. And then I'll obsess and like try to break it apart. And that's kind of how I've got my critical lexicon. And then the question of comics is like, well, I read all the books that were available. I obsessed over those like writers for comic books. I read a lot of that kind of stuff, but really it's like taking apart comics in that kind of like, I remember my partner at the time, she became incredibly annoyed. I'd just sit there counting panels. So like, you're going, okay, 5 panels. This comic is 83 panels. It's 83 panels. This one is 107 panels. Because that kind of fun. And I still do that now. When a comic surprises me by what they pack in, I go, okay, how did they do that? Because comics are, that's the narrative unit. So that kind of stuff. And there's stuff like reverse engineering scripts. Like I looked at a page and I wrote the script for that page. Okay, what would I write to get this effect? And really bad exercises. Just like writing comics. You get better at writing comics by getting comics drawn or executing comics. I've got like a whole 300-page photo comic graphic novel I did on the web, like back 2003 or so, called Negative Land, and it's not online anymore, thankfully. But you know what I mean? Like, it's terrible, but I learned so much from it in terms of executing pages. That's kind of like one of my big advices to anybody is like just do the comics. I remember like Al Ewing, he did little kind of tiny, it's more of about a quarter of A5 size little zines he handed out at Comic Cons. And he's got Al can draw in a kind of like berserk little weirdo imp way, but what can you do? And that's kind of like by executing comics you learn. So you learn by doing. Because I kind of come from the punk rock background, I come from a zine background. And the idea, like so many zine people are in bands because part of your love of music is creating. You form a bad band to make music. And it doesn't matter if you're good or not. Right. It's part of your expression of loving it. And for me, that was comics. I went straight from, I'm really interested and then I've got to learn how to do this. I mean, it's definitely, when I teach comics, I did a masterclass a few times for The Guardian. And I think I think about expanding it into something bigger. Like, because it's very technical in terms of like, there's some really good books about writing comics. And I think I've got a slightly different approach to it to people, which makes it worth. There's a whole section where I kind of take a bunch of comics like various like a Civil War issue, an issue of 4, an issue of Saga, an issue of Sex Criminals, and I break it down. Okay, this is an average of 4.2 panels per page. This number of breakdown of specific page numbers, etc. Because this is what I did when I jumped on 4 because I took over from JMS at Marvel. That was my big break, really, kind of the JMS left suddenly and someone had to take over, and it was me, which I laughed at. I was literally looking at a forum thread 2 weeks earlier, people speculating who's going to take over, and I was like, I literally thought, I feel sorry for whoever got that job. That's a tricky one. It's so funny. But what I did was I stopped and I read JMS because I knew my job was to continue his story, so I had to have the cadence. So I broke down JMS. Okay, what's his panel structure? How many panels per page? What rhythm? How many splash pages? So it's like explicitly, I was playing understudy then in a very visual, and I tried to learn how to do it. To learn.
So then did you feel that you needed to do your best JMS, or like how do you then blend Kieron in? Because then what that inevitably turns into is the thing you did on Journey into Mystery, right? And so like. Where it feels like that feels way more Kieron to me than anything else. But I think for you in that early stage, how do you walk that tightrope?
Yeah, it's tricky. Definitely for that. I felt the job was understudying. As in, this story has been left incomplete. The readers who have committed to the story need an ending. I often felt like I felt that. I felt that actually with Krakoa even. Trying to get an ending to actually satisfy the readers is at least kind of what I think is my duty. And duties are self-imposed. But like people are following the story, you want to do it a bit like that. At the same time, it's going to be you because you can't help it. I mean, like if you read that first arc, the pacing isn't naturally what you've seen before. I was somebody that quite dense panel grids. It was much more spacious. And to be honest, doing that taught me about the power of being a bit more spacious because like the reviews of that were great. It was some of my best reviews I had up to that point. And it was me going, I get it. This is like, I occasionally, what would Mark Miller do? In that kind of like splash page, okay, there's a physicality of the performance of what the operatic working of a 3-panel grid, not which I don't often do, but you know what I mean. Right. But you creep in, so it's like there's a kind of like it's always for me, it's always the emotional context. So especially that early 4 stuff, there's 2 characters. That was such a messed up job. I don't want to go too much into that. It was a really weird job that I was doing these arcs, had to get everyone back to. As America in 3 issues, and 4 wasn't even in the comic, so I had to get 4 all the way from this other separate plot over to Latveria. Also, Loki's just dissected somebody, an Asgardian. The Asgardians know. Oh, they've got to forgive Loki, though, because in 3 issues' time, he needs to be back in America for siege on their side. You know, like, so, like, it was literally like a logic problem. This is kind of part of the appeal of work for hire and some degree writing generally. How can I solve this problem? And there was the two characters were Doctor Doom and Balder. And Balder is a king who knows he's not good enough for the job. And that's me writing all my insecurities. Desperately aware that I'm not ready for this. I'm not meant to be writing for, but I've somehow got to pull it together. And the other side is Doctor Doom. And Doctor Doom is like, I'm the best person in the world. You're all going to effing worship me. You know what I mean? Literally the opening line is, what is Doom's opening line? A come sweet future, your master awaits. And that's absolutely me saying, come at me, bro, to the world. So like, you just dig. Is that
something that you feel is partially some of the confidence that you got coming off of Phonogram? Because I want to talk Phonogram for a bit, like, because for you, right, like that book feels, I mean, and is right for you, is incredibly personal, and but all again, right, like feels very Kieron. And so I'd love to just like hear, well, first I want to hear about Phonogram, like you pitching that and getting it made, right? And then I would love to hear about like what that early experience was like, and inevitably kind of making, and how that maybe prepared you for making a genre.
It's one of the things, coming from a journalist background in that way, like, because Phonogram for me was like metaphorical music journalism. Like, it was all what music really does to people. As in, so the stories weren't just like made up. They were like, okay, how can I illustrate what this does to people? And all the way, like, it's a bit more woolly around the edges in the first Rue Britannia. But by the second one, I've absolutely drilled down in terms of this is what Phonogram has to be. So it has to be real. I mean, talking about real music, real feelings.
Yep.
Quite often about filtered real events in terms of the and with the volume turned up quite regularly. Like the whole of the first episode of Phonogram set at a Ladyfest gig in Bristol in the Fleece and Firkin, and which is a real gig I saw. You know, and it got me thinking about my, you know, the relationships of men to music and lots of other stuff in ways. And I turned that into basically a goddess beating me up because I'm and Cole is an embodiment of everything that is bad about me, or not true. It's an embodiment of everything that's bad about my music journalism. That, you know, the awful arrogance and just the especially that period, it's you know, it's very critical, very autocritical. Sure. But what I do, you know, all the insecurities is what I write about, but also the swagger came from being a critic. In that kind of, I'm going to have I had a professional opinions. I'm going to walk into a room and have a hot take, and I know people are going to disagree with me. You know, and that's what I kind of, there's an element of brought over, and that's kind of, you see that with people like writers I love as well. And it becomes unbearable if just taken to extremes. But that kind of like, hello, here I am. Like this is actually a Phonogram memory. Actually, at the same gig now I've remembered. And there was someone went on stage, and she was like, there were some really good people there, but there was like a singer-songwriter who was terrible, just terrible. And my partner at the time, she says, she was actively angry of somebody getting on stage and doing that. Because it's one of those kind of like, and that was a really interesting perspective is, yeah, people talk about stage fright, insecurity, but you got on stage. Don't waste people's time. Honestly, I put off breaking into comics for quite a while. Put off trying to break into comics seriously for a while because I wanted to be good, or is good enough. Because I'm aware, like, $3 is a lot of money. You know, I've never been quite that borderline, but I've definitely had some of my friends who have been buying comics. You know, that $3 is the thing that might make them happy today. So kind of, you know what I mean? This is a really, that's what you're doing. Yes, you get people with stacks, which is obviously great as well, but you're really just like playing with, like, you're giving someone, I mean, a cookie's not a great way to describe it, but you want to give something that makes people's lives better.
Sure.
So like those two things, the arrogance of being on stage, but also the understanding that it's a sacred position and you really don't want to waste people's time. All that was in Phonogram. So And it was basically, weirdly, most of my stories, I remember where it came from. Almost all the individual Phonogram stories, I remember the moment it hit me. But the idea of Phonogram, I don't remember.
I was going to say, like, was there, like, how does that become the book for you? Right?
I know. Like, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, normally I remember the origin story, but it almost feels like me not remembering it feels like a Phonogram story. As in, like, I don't know, some goddess gave it me, then whacked me round the head. I remember the story being there, but I don't remember the Nova music is magic. So it makes it feel like I don't.
Was it the only story?
As in Phonogram,
for what I mean, Phonogram was, but like what is it? Does Phonogram happen where it's like I have this idea, it came to me, however it came to me, and then this is the one I'm working on, or is it I've got a notebook full of potential things, which like are there other Kieron potential first books on the side of the road?
It's interesting, like especially Phonogram, because it came as a concept first and built up. Like, but I met Jamie. I mean, the Jamie origin story is basically he came to my. I've told it so many times, but I might as well very quickly. My first comic anthology. I was selling on a table in Bristol Comic Con with other people on the table. Jamie comes to the tables, asking after the person who isn't there because he's done something in their book. He asks me to show his portfolio. He shows it. I see it and say, I've got a great idea for a comic called Phonogram. You should draw it. And that kind of like, we're just straight to the business. But in my head, I don't remember telling him that because in my head, I just fought it and then spent the next 6 months seducing him. When he, of course, he was in much quicker than that. No, I was like working on various things. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I was doing stuff for the web. I did like smaller comics, but like, but when I started thinking about Phonogram, which was maybe 2002, 2003, we went to the place to pitch Image. We weren't good enough to go to the thing. I was thinking maybe this is my next black and white photocopied comic. Like we'll do something really underground again. But we sort of ambled along, and me and Jamie did a comic for Official PlayStation Magazine. We did a monthly comic for like 4 years. Oh shit! Yeah, it's not good. I remember the editor gave me the pitch, the idea for this is what I want people to do, and I said I reckon there's maybe like a year's worth of good comics there. And we did it for 4 years, and we proved him right. There were only like 12 good ones, I think. But he got Jamie money. That was mainly, as in, it was a thing. At that point, it was so much of that period about, can I get Jamie money? Like, because, him earning money is him not drawing comics. This is so much about the economics of the thing. But there was other books. The one I remember, actually, I'm going to mention Alex de Campi. Shout out to Alex de Campi, because me and her did an anthology together. We were publishing it. She was one of my people I bounced stuff back and forth with. I was doing a book with Lena Grady called Unit 666. Unit 666. I think, I feel so bad about this as well. I think, did someone pick it up? Was it Desperado said yes? But like, it's basically, it's a supernatural SAS comic. It's political. This is post 9/11. There's lots of really smart stuff and weird fantasy stuff in there. And like some ideas I really cut. Like there's basically a Brunhilde character who's having sex with Frankenstein's monster with the lightning storm and stuff. Like animating it. Yeah. There's lots of really cool stuff. And there's a really funny joke in the first issue where a zombie pretends to be a slow zombie then jumps someone. So which I think still quite funny. But but at the same time, I showed it and chatted to I showed Campy the pitch, and she was like, "Yeah, this is really fun. This is fun. This is exciting pulp. Do you want this to be your first comic?" And I was a bit defensive, obviously. And no, this is smart in this different ways, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I said, no, she's right. Like, if I do one comic, it's got to be one comic. So Phonogram became this. Phonogram is kind of me kicking in the doors, and in fact, quite aggressively on the first page is really that first page of Rue Britannia really wants you not to like it, and it's like Cole's awful, and the writing is aggressively sharp and messy. Like if you get past the first caption, you might be in, and that's deliberate. It's like I don't want to waste. Then I didn't want to waste people's time. No, now I do. But then sure. No, this is what the book is. You can go now if you like. And it was so much like deliberate. It was a book that was made to mean a lot to less people. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that kind of. It's the cult band. It was that explicitly. This is going to be a cult band. And later, Wick did was like, can we fill Wembley Stadium with a similar idea? You know, the idea of like that kind of the one is like deliberately playing toilets which have got pee on the floor. You know, in like that kind of gig, that punk rock gig. There's no stage, the electrics don't work, everybody's going to die. Versus headlining Glastonbury. You know, that kind of.
So I'd love to ask about that because, like I said, like the jump from Phonogram to Wictiv is like it's something that is so incredibly indie to then something that feels way more commercial, right? Because like at this point, right, like you said, like you're playing bigger stadiums, more people to see, but for you, did it feel like that? Like was it intentionally more commercial, or what was the relationship and the talks between you and Jamie like in trying to keep what the ethos maybe of your working relationship together and your creative relationship together in taking it to the next level?
It's tricky. Like, it's worth knowing about Phonogram. I've said that the first one. Rubertan is deliberately really abrasive. And and it kind of weirdly, it did bug me even then, as in some of the reviews were weird in terms of like, it was about stuff that wasn't in the comic. It was something about some random music fan who clearly bullied them in school. And I'm like, none of this philosophy is in the book. You've just got this weird trauma, not weird trauma, understandable trauma. Sure. So the second volume was very much like, no, we're going to start from first principles and quietly explain what we're really saying. Like, you know, this is about whatever you love is great. This is about what you find in music. I'm not trying to tell you what's good or bad. And it builds, and that's why you've got 7 different characters in 7 different, you know, you get deep, you know, by the multiplicity of perspective, we can create truth. So all the way along, we've been trying to like get this kind of slightly weird idea in a accessible way. But it's all like about half of the story, and I mean, it's all set in one nightclub, but about a third of the story is all in the toilet. So literally. This is not a glamorous, despite the glamorous fun people, there's a lot of toilet time. And so like, Phonogram never sold. And that's true. It sold fine. And you know, for the book that it was, and it's made money definitely eventually. And it's had a laugh for life and it's been a real cult book in a proper way. So me and Jamie did a variety of things. And the idea of Young Avengers turned up. And after Young Avengers was like, basically me can we take our Phonogram tool set from, Singles Club, that bit, and do it in the Marvel Universe, and kind of pretend that we own the book. It was kind of obviously slightly after Hawkeye, and also we knew we didn't own the book, but like, let's make the intellectual leap that pretending we own it. Can we do a pop comic in a year? Admittedly, and the answer is probably not. Like, you know, Young Avengers we're really proud of, but the firm limitations of the system are still there. You know, there's a line we said in interviews that Teens aren't rated teen, but like they are a bit. You know, if they're done at Marvel, they have to be. So Wicked Divine kind of came from, can we take this? We want to take this further. This aesthetic, because Wictiv is not like Young Avengers in plot in any way. It's much more Wictiv. Wictiv is much more grounded. It's, in lots of ways, it's about buses. It's not even. It's about, you know, Young Avengers is about metaphorically going to a diner in the morning in space, but like, or like waking up. Like Young Avengers, the first scene is Kate waking up in orbit, having sex with Marvel Boy. It's a one night stand. It's specifically me writing about the first time you wake up in someone's bed you don't know, until that, you know, I don't know, this is a bed I didn't know before, and I've woken up in a bed for the first time. And in this case, it's in orbit, so it's it's us using that metaphor. Whilst Wictiv wasn't that. Wictiv was the other way around, of actually heightening normality, as in, okay, my life is I'm on a bus, my life is awful, I can't get home, and then I'm backstage at a gig with some gods. That difference between the mundanity of life and these moments of transcendence. So, you know, like all the way through we work out, you know what I mean? Like that. So they're not the same story in any way, but we're thinking about the space. So, there was a sense of, how to phrase this. When Phonogram stopped at issue 7, basically after the 2 minis, I remember chat with, Rick Remender. And Rick, Fear Agent, just had talked and just ended as well. And we're joking about the awful difficulty of trying to get an ongoing book in that period. Because of all our generation, the only person who had an ongoing book was Jason Aaron. He got all the way through Scabbed. So everyone else hadn't really got what we wanted, which is the 50 to 60 length ongoing at least. You know, they're the books that inspired me to get into comics. And we didn't think we could do it. And the way we described it was, it's almost like someone passing away of cancer, as in, you know, Comics kill, Phonogram lasted for 17 issues before it was killed by comics. It survived by Kieron Gillen and Jamie McKelvie, and all, Fear Agent, etc., etc. And we sort of joked in that, and circa Young Avengers, we realized we were hot enough, we could have an ongoing. So we were going to hit this as hard as we could. Because this is why Bowie was a useful thing for us. Bowie can go to Berlin, but Bowie can make noise and on this record, but Bowie can also do Let's Dance. And this was us explicitly, let's take everything I learned about action comics and narrative and drama and kissing and all that stuff, and add it to the emotional reality of Phonogram and that. But also it's less grounded. I mean, Phonogram is explicitly all the stuff is metaphorical in Phonogram, whilst Wick the metaphor is much looser. It's not one for one real, but it's got bits of it. But yeah, and it's also explicitly, let's make a fantasy universe from scratch. Let's make this addictive place to lose themselves in, and let's have some swagger. That was one of the elements of Wick was the idea of, let's just pretend it's the biggest book on the shelves. It's not. You know what I mean? And we'll just, Jamie's covers are amazing in that way. Here's the character. Here's a headshot. You should care about this person. How do you know? Well, you obviously must care about them because we've just put them like this. We wouldn't be doing this if you shouldn't care about them. You know what I mean? There's a level of confidence trip to Wick. I remember the Douglas Wolk hit a line in Comics Alliance's review as a bit like, when Lennon McCartney said that, we'll sit down and write a swimming pool. That's how we described the first issue. Yeah. So yes, 100% we wanted to sell copies because we wanted to have, because selling copies is the only way you get to 10 trades. So that's what we wanted to do. And that was, that was the goal, and can we make a pop comic? And then we definitely did with does that make sense?
Yeah. So I guess then, does that success change what you thought about audience expectation?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I was because Wick did. Okay. People this is the most obvious thing in the world, so people either know it or don't know it. Wick's idea came from my immediate response to my dad's terminal cancer diagnosis. It was the idea I had when I was 38, 2 years to live. It's about turning 40. It's about saying goodbye to any concept of youth. So literally, I have 2 years to live. And that is, but also explicitly, it's I want by the time I'm 40 to have something which is basically put in my gravestone or put in my brackets after my name in a way which is, I want a definitive work, and that definitely changes because I've done it. You don't need to do it again. And you also realize how hollow it is. Wick is obviously about the hollowness. You hit the third year, especially when Laura's talking about, was it worth everything she gave up to be a god? And her answer is very clearly no. As a rather and she goes further to find out what it's worth. But there was Wick is about the process of Wick as well, which was the depressive thing is, I knew that at the beginning. I knew Laura would be feeling like this at this point. So I knew what I wanted was bad for me. But also wasn't bad for me because it was great as well. Life, eh? But definitely that kind of, I became much calmer after it. I mean, Wick was a device of me getting over my own sorry ass. That kind of the brittleness of myself, I think is disappeared across Wick. And I'm especially in Die, I was more at peace with myself because I've done it. I've got less to prove. And
I guess
that
for
makes
you,
the writing, I think, better.
So then for you then, how important is the catharsis of writing?
Obviously, there's a bit actually I wrote in one of the Die loaded scripts coming up. I started writing some dialogue and I just carried on. Why are you writing this, Kieron? This is clearly what are you doing? And it's still in my notes. The bit where I go from this character talking to me rambling.
To you journaling.
Yeah, honestly. And there's so much you find notes you're lying around and you go, oh, that's disturbing. What was that about? There's oh God, can I give you? Do you want to hear my theory of art? This is a complete sideline, but
Let's go.
This is
buckle in, everybody.
I was in a bar in Washington, visiting, was it Big Blue Games? Anyway, I was chatting a bar to a random Washington guy, presumably someone, he got the vibe of someone intelligence services, and he gave me his theory about art. And this is stuck in my head for over 20 years, because it's wrong, but interesting. He basically, there's three sorts of artists. There's Michelangelo, there's Leonardo, and there's Raphael. Donatello isn't involved in this theory. The kind of art, first artist, Michelangelo. This is basically art as a serious conversation with God. everything is serious. This is passionate. This is absolutely important and intense.
Mhm.
Like you see it in Leonardo's work. It's really, this is, you know, a gay or bisexual man clearly wrestling with all these concepts, and you see it with every stroke. It's really interesting. Conversely, Leonardo, ideas. It's the idea of mercurial genius. Yeah, he'll start a load of projects, maybe not finish them all. You know, he'll go from thing to thing to thing. Then the guy told me this story about, this isn't true, I stress, but I'll tell him the story he told me because it works. They were working on the either end of a church at one point. And basically, Leonardo basically going off for drinks, bringing his mates round, and Michelangelo painting away, and eventually just throws Leonardo against the wall saying, take it seriously. That's not a true story, but I like it anyway.
Sure.
But they're the two artists. Artists as serious conversation with God, artist as ideas. And then there's Raphael. Nice guy, paints pretty pictures, not a lot going on upstairs. And like when I first saw a Raphael when I went to Rome, I looked at it and I was like, I can see it. Like it's really well done, but it's not. But what this guy's theory is broken is that it's a fundamental disrespect of Raphael. Because what Raphael really is craft. Because this theory is the sort of thing Leonardo thinks up. I would bet this guy would view himself as a Leonardo. It's an ideas guy. It's playfulness. And therefore, people of ideas don't respect people who would do too much craft. Because ideas are kind of the opposite of craft in some ways. Because ideas is, you know what I mean? Okay, don't. Anyway, so it's a craft. So you can, and the reason why I do this rant to people in pubs is because they immediately start trying to place themselves.
Right.
Which is interesting. And of course, they get different.
In my head.
I think,
and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
which one am I?
Exactly. I think the model actually is broken. I think the model is much more like an RPG class, as in how many points do you spend in each? Like you've got 10 points. Where do you spend your points?
Right.
You know? And it's interesting. And the reason I mention is that I genuinely think I would put myself, if I could self-analyze, I would say I put myself as Leonardo corner. That's because it's the formalism. It's the, you know, not even the formalism. Here's a different way of doing it. And everyone who works for me puts me strongly in Michelangelo corner. As in, it's always kind of me wrestling with some ridiculous immaterial thing. You know what I mean? And I find that really interesting. Anyway, So yeah, it's always got to be, because, you know, I mentioned even earlier, when I'm writing like 4, I'm putting my insecurity and my arrogance into 2 characters and letting them fight. You know, it's always kind of like, you just put my demons there. You know, like, what am I afraid of? You know,
so is it, how often is it intentional versus accidental? In that, like, oh, because like you've mentioned a bunch of, like, you're a meticulous planner, right? But like, as you're getting into the story and maybe you're learning about your characters and you're doing the writing, and like you said, you know, I'm putting myself in some of that. I guess maybe that die example is the thing where you just started typing dialogue and all of a sudden, like, you're off on your own tangent. Like, how often does that happen versus the intentionality of maybe sometimes doing it?
It's like, you know, the theme, I think, is the thing, and you'll discover much more. Like, that's the thing, is writing for me is a process of discovery. So it's like, I say, I'm going to go and explore this valley. I've still got to find out what's in the valley. You know what I mean? So like the intentionality, the structure is me knowing where I'm going. Okay. But like, I don't know what I'm going to find there always. So, you know, that's the kind of the process. I mean, you know, it's therapy you get paid for, as many people have put it. And that's not true. But like, because it is different from therapy. In some ways, it's like,
right.
It's almost like it's the opposite of therapy. I don't think writing helps you get I've said Wictive helped me, but that Wictive is an exception. Quite often,
no, it just gave you all the things that you should have brought to therapy.
I must say, I was going through therapy I did like 7 years of therapy. I started like the first year of Wictive. You know, that was all in parallel.
Yeah.
I bet. So okay, it's always more. Literally, it's like listen to your subconscious. By definition, it knows more than you do. Right. So like the answer is yes, but also no.
Fair. All right, so let's take a little jump. Let's start with Die, and then we'll get to power fantasy, because so Die, you know, is a world you are returning to, but I want to talk about the first series for a bit, because that is a book, in my opinion, feels like it hit at the right exact time. And I'd love to hear from you on why you think maybe it resonated so strong?
It's like, well, there's another fluke there. It's like, if I was planning to bandwagon jump, it would have been the perfect time to do it. I remember it was actually having dinner with Jerry Drugan in LA, and I was told him the idea I've just had this idea to San Diego. I've told him the idea and said, have you watched Stranger Things drop yesterday? So it's literally that kind of, and it's like I had to change the pitch or how I pitched Die to make it not sound like Stranger Things. Because if you say 1980s D&D cartoon and Stephen King, that's it. I'm talking about is like Die is Stephen King's It, specifically the old people. And 1980s, you know what I mean? Like it's a fundamentally different book. So, and of course it's actual play. There's a lot of growing the cultural movement there. And I'd gotten seriously back into indie games like 2013, maybe, indie RPGs. I'm sort of pausing here because in my head, I saw Die as just there was literally the moment when I sort of decided chatting to Ray Fawkes and Jamie, and we were sort of joking about whatever happened to those D&D kids. Mm-hmm. And it nagged at me. And then we're having dinner actually with Eric and a load of other image creators. And it sort of hit me. I said, why is that idea hitting me? Because did part of me disappear into a fantasy world at the age of 16 and never come out? How has that hurt me? And then I burst into tears. And that's the moment I know I'm going to write something. Because honestly, if something really upsets me, I go, oh no, that's like, if it's upsetting me, it's got to be there's something there. And so Salt, the idea of actually, okay, how much is my love of fantasy and my disappearing to all these worlds? Because that's what I've done, metaphorically. I've turned it into my career. It's what I'm doing with you now. How has that hurt me and the people around me? So how, and then you build, so it's basically Saul's the character, Peter Pan, a psychopath. Except that's the core idea. Of course, that's not what Die is. It's not Peter Pan, a psychopath. It's really sad people trying to find each other. Because that's what I mean. It's like, people often had with Wicked Divine, some people describe it, is it a satire? Is it a celebration? And it's not, it's a description. This is what being an artist is. And occasionally it's the weird thing in Wictiv that when we have the occasional Hollywood meeting, we try and explain, like you always get the exec asking the question, is that why did the gods want to do this stuff? And it's like, because they want to be good. I mean, why? I don't write to get money. I do, but you want to be the world's best artist because you want to be the world's best artist. Right. The idea it is like the Queen's Gambit. Why does she want to play the Queen's Gambit? Because it's the thing that makes it's the thing she seems to want to live for. The idea of that creative excellence. Anyway, with so the portrait is important to me. I think Phonogram and Wictiv were portrait. I mean, Phonogram's a portrait of being a fan. Wictiv's a portrait of being a creator. Die is about, RPGs. How has games broadly changed my life? And I'm talking, and all that stuff goes in. So I research what games are for, the history of games, talking about individuals, talking about my experience, people I know's experience, and doing a portrait of game better or worse. And by the end of like the 20 issues, you kind of end up with this kind of a very, I think, rounded picture. Especially, I mean, Die is kind of based on the idea that it's kind of taking some of the 1980s satanic panic imagery, the idea that D&D was satanic and would like lead you to dark and evil places. And so my theory was like, well, we've won that war because D&D is everywhere. So now we can actually go back in the same way that in comics we go back to Wortham. We can now engage with Wortham and just pick it apart. In the same way, I think in games we can engage with satanic panic imagery and go, maybe they had a point. Even if I don't think they have a point, like let's play with that idea. So yeah, for me it was a case. With Die, I wanted to do a story as Phonogram was to music, Die would be to games. That's kind of what the idea of the book was.
So,
and the same way, the fact we're doing a Die sequel now means in the same way. Like with Die, it was always like, yeah, this is a story. I want some. In the same way, Phonogram was a device. Die is a device. And it's created to us. And people have got one really good specific execution of Die in those 20 issues. And then when we do the new one, they'll say, oh, right, this is the same thing, but also very different. And I think anyone who's actually played the game also realizes that. As in, wait. Kieron's given the structure of how to play Die. But it's very different for all of us. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, so my next question was basically going to be, how does time away change it?
As in to Die?
Yeah, for Die. What, because like you're someone who very clearly draws from experience. And so and experiences plural. How does the time between die the first time and returning to die maybe change your approach to it in a sense, and how does it maybe inevitably change what the book becomes next?
Yeah. It's like with Phonogram, I had a bunch of ideas in terms of like, these are things that the Phonogram device can do. As in, this story is I'm going to do this Britpop Memory Kingdom story. I'll do a story in a nightclub. I'll do the origin of Emily. And there's the ones I wanted to do and never did. I wanted to do a story set in a nightclub across 60 years. So we go in every 10 years. And I want to do one set in the 1893 World Fair. I want to do one set in 91 in Stafford. These, but different kind of things. And the same with Die, in terms of, there's lots of things the first Die was about, but it was really about a group of people getting to know each other better through games and discovering, as in, we know each other, we play this game together, we know each other better. And there's a lot of other stuff in there, and that's the game bit. This is about, and the Die Load is kind of about people who don't know each other as well, is the best way of putting it. And this is kind of like just discovering people through games entirely in a separate way. And it's also about, because Die's about a group of friends, and this isn't about a group of friends. Like, it's quite tricky to talk around it because I don't really want to go too much.
Sure.
But at the same time, that, and then of course, if I've got ideas for other things with Die down the road, which take different parts. But the specific question you asked about the real world stuff is, one of the weird things about Die is, 2018, they're going to stay away for 2 years, they'll be back in 2020, and COVID happens. So that, and since Die set in the real world, these people have disappeared from, they come back, and we've got COVID masked in the final issue. And that wasn't planned, that obviously I couldn't control COVID, but it's like, I've set in the real world. So that's the main thing. There's an irony. Ash has come back from Die, being isolated, trapped in a world of fantasy and escapism. And now he's, back on Earth with his wife and their baby during COVID for 2 years. And that's where we pick up like 2022. That's where Die Loaded starts. So It's about COVID. Or rather, it's not about COVID. It's about raising, talk about life. It's about raising kids.
Right.
It's about parenting. It's about that relationship. All that kind of stuff. And also the isolation of COVID and all these kind of aspects. That's the stuff that fed into it. And it's definitely like kind of towards the back end of Die when COVID happened, I definitely was thinking this is a thing that really makes you think about escapism. Because a lot of people played D&D in that period. In that kind of, there's a lot of people getting on Zooms.
Yeah, right. No, dude, that's when I started. Like, I have a campaign that I still play now that I started in COVID, and we all play over Zoom, which is wild. It's
like, so that all that stuff thinking, but like, so that's what it's kind of about. But it's also, this is so frustrating because it's a bit like the people, like typically to me, you reach the end of issue 1 and go, oh, right, I see it. The other thing is actually it's got cons. That's the other thing. It's about gaming cons. That's one of the big kind of devices throughout the whole series. Because gaming cons are very different to comic cons, which I find interesting. So like, that is a device, because that's like, they've got the 3 levels of Die. You've got the kind of really gritty kind of like think about life, humans, what makes us alive, what's, stuff. The really, really kind of quotidian. And then you've got like the big fantasy drama, emotional epic. And then you've also got really, really intense jokes about RPGs or like critiques or living structure. Like the whole episode in Die 1, I think of often of the island full of like cultists. Basically, it's a Lovecraft island of these cultists doing rituals, but the rituals are RPGs. So like, and the whole structure is that Lovecraft was inspired by visions of the game of Call of Cthulhu in the future. And the idea that the utterly meaningless words they're saying is like D&D's like Thaco and all of these words, which is like, Lovecraft would have hated that. You know what I mean? But the whole kind of like that of it, and the idea of like presenting these RPG players exactly how these kind of pallid, monstrous figures that Lovecraft would have viewed. And there's something quite funny about that, especially because like, the ritualism of the cultists, the culty nature of an RPG, and I mean that in a literal. There's I forgot the name of the book, but there's I can't think of it. But one of the books I read for Die is specifically about the magic circle and religion, and the magic circle and RPGs. And it's part of the reason why some religious groups felt threatened by D&D in the 80s. They were right. This is stepping upon the magic circle of what religion is in terms of like how it operates, which is really interesting too.
So
I suppose like, if I was going to sum up Die Loaded, what I think's most excited about is it's for the people who kind of like got a bit lost by the amount of RPG theory in it. It's got less RPG theory, and the theory we wear is lighter, and it's much more about the personal drama and the personal journey and the people. Like I wanted the sequel to be really about people. As in like these specific people. And I think I've got a really unusual way of talking about the people we love and approaching it from a separate dimension as well. Yeah. And Stephanie kills.
So talk to me about that. Talk to me about working with Stephanie. Obviously, like it's a little different in that, so you worked with Stephanie on the first one, but then you also did, the OGN with her, and now you're doing this. So like you've been able to kind of keep working with her throughout this time, but I guess what is there shorthand now between you and her when it comes to, putting the pages together and building the world, or is, given the length of time that you both have worked together, or is it still like kind of, with the early days of the first Die, it just feels this more of the same?
It's complicated. It's like Stephanie's like we first worked together doing the covers for Journey to Mystery, and then we did like she drew the last issue of Journey to Mystery, which is suddenly, oh no, this is amazing. We need to do something eventually together. And she did a couple issues of Wick Div, so it's always kind of floating around. Should we do something together? And we just kind of clicked. And I found myself thinking, I'm always very complimented by when artists want to carry on working with me. And like Stephanie seems very happy with doing much. I try to encourage Stephanie to do her own stuff. Same with Jamie. In fact, same with Caspar. Like I'm right. For artists who I really think should be writing, which is an interesting. I think that's what attracts me to them in that kind of they're storytellers. I really like working with people who like telling stories.
Right.
With Stephanie, I describe her as working as like the sea, because she's kind of like this part of the reason why I work with her. She's the opposite of Jamie. Like she's a big impressionistic mood person. She's not, and Jamie is a clockwork. He's a machine in terms of like positions and beats. She evokes emotion while Jamie is very specific. I remember like there's like the first issue of Die. I tried writing a grid like of the 6 characters introducing themselves, and it came back as these vivid slashes across the page. And it was, no, I'm never going to try writing a grid for her again. Because it's what you cannot contain the sea. The sea will flow where it wishes. And that's it. So it becomes, that's why Die is in some level caption led. Although I take more of the actual weight and she gets the ability to explore elsewhere. So, and the fact she's got a very, I'll say it to Jamie. I showed Jamie a page, I showed him a page later, and it was like, is this finished or not finished? I don't know. When is the sky finished? And that is what Stephanie is like. She'll tweak and play and just get to a position where she's happy, then maybe come back later. Because that's the kind of, there's a real fluidity to what she does. So I try to lean into that. My scripts to her, they're as light as they can be.
Sure.
But the problem with Die is there's a lot of not just world building, there's also specific world building, as in, okay, this is evoking this 1980s RPG theory about dogs meaning, well, I don't know, you know what I mean? Something quite specific. Right. This is important. But I also know if you write too much, she's going to lose it. So what you end up doing is you do this stuff, and then you do a kind of too long different read at the bottom to sum up everything. As in, you give it all the extra stuff possibly, and then say what we really need is a close up of someone's hand. And that kind of so you separate the two flows. So here's a bunch of will building, because then she gets to build on the page as well. Because me doing all this isn't saying this is what you should do. These are mainly some options, and also the second thing you do is giving her places to play. This is like there's one bit about halfway through Die when I researched like 3 sub stuff in Bronte's. Okay, this scene could be set here in from this bit of Bronte Juvenilia, here from a completely separate one, or you can make up a third one. So I described 3 paragraphs for each one, and pick which one you like, and I can follow you.
She just goes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like I give her options, because if I don't need to tell her what to do, I can set her a task so she can have fun. Don't tame the sea. Give the sea a chance to flow.
So I guess, how do you feel that out, right? Like how do you know, given with any of the artists and stuff that you've worked with, what are like the first 3 dates like, right? Like, and then before you both feel like comfortable where like you can do like what you just described with Stephanie, you give her the options and say, I trust you, you go.
Yeah. It's like, it's just one of those bits which is really hard to generalize because it's like dating. It's like,
Sure.
it's like, for me, it's like forming a band. Like, okay, what do you play like? Like, what do you like doing? Oh, you like doing that then? Okay. So that, that's the thing. Oh, no, you do this, you do this. And this is one of the things that, like, obviously I've worked with a lot of artists and some really good artists who I've, done perfectly fine work with who we didn't click. Like, that kind of, there's something like, no, you do better work with other people. I can't work out why I can't get there with you.
Sure.
But it's just not the way we work. And there's other people who are just saw and immediately it's like, oh wow, this is astounding. Right. And just listening to that. It's one of the things, like, one of the problems of the industry is that quite regularly creators are pulled apart from each other. They only work together briefly. And you got like, someone like Ed and Sean, Right. Ed and Sean's relationship is born of the fact they've had like over 20 years to do this together. But me and Jamie got to be who me and Jamie, weirdly, because neither of us were successful enough to escape. This is one of my theories. Like, normally it's like Jock and Andy Diggle, they hit a point and they tore apart. Well, for me and Jamie, we both did pretty well in different ways, but we never quite got to the point where Jamie was suddenly asked to draw all the Absolute books or something. Sure. Jamie was always in a position where maybe he could do that stuff. And the same as me, I was, I was in a good position in Marvel, but I wasn't John,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of,
but in a good way. As in, you stick together and you get.
So it's like a vibe check.
Yeah, exactly. It's a vibe check. And in the case like Stephanie, it's like, this way isn't working, so I won't. If she's not going to draw a grid, I'm not going to ask her to draw a grid. Why would I do that? There's a grid in issue 4 of Die Loaded, and expressly said, Stephanie, in that kind, this will be funny. Trust me. Go with this. And just work. And especially because I said, I think it's like a character challenge because it's all about character acting. And it'll be like, this is it's more like, this is the game you'll find fun. You know what I mean? That's the way to phrase it. In the case of like, Jamie was such a long period of time that it's hard to say because I remember multiple conversations saying, what do you want to work on next? Like, there's a bit like, because Jamie, I remember a bit when I was doing Siege Loki for Marvel, which was a really good issue Jamie drew. And he said he wanted to work in his deep focus. So like there's a splash page, the second page in the comic, where it's just specifically structured so Jamie could play with that. And that's, what you're interested in doing. Stephanie is quite in, when she was talking about doing her clean line stuff, like instead of just painting fully, doing more like the pencils instead of something. And you see bits of that in Die, and that's stuff we want to kind of bring out. In the case of Caspar, he's a consummate storyteller. He does something I don't do with anybody. I don't see roughs for Caspar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Caspar's quick enough if there's a major problem we can tweak stuff. But like, Caspar wants, and I can go with it. Because possibly, I've done such a machine-driven book with Jamie and Wicked. I don't need to do that again. And in this case, I want to really make... This is one of these, but it's slightly egotistical, but I don't mean it in this way. When I'm doing a creator-owned book, I want to make the artists I work with a star. I want to give everything I can do to show off what they do to their best advantage. The idea of like, people go, oh, look at this person. Because there's definitely like writers, the really best comic writers to me are people who take artists who are good and like give them a platform to become great. Or like show people their greatness. And I certainly don't do that always. Like, there's certain things I don't think I'm good at, but like the people I do long-term relationships with, I think we work well together. Anyway, that's the same with Caspar. I trust him implicitly. And Caspar, if he's gone well off, he'll ask me. Like like issue 12 of there's a big kind of sideways shot of an underground base. I said, can I do it? Can I do it like a big sideways shot instead of like the more quotidian approach I was saying. I've used the word quotidian twice in this, which is pretty bad. And I said, sure. This thing is like, it's like Jamie and Kate, it's like people, I'm starting to publish my scripts occasionally on my newsletter, like in a new script club. But one of the notes I'm going to put into people is, you couldn't get a full script of Wicked or Die or Power Fantasy without having all our DMs. Like there's a whole separate conversation.
That's it.
For me, a script is the start of a conversation, as I always put it.
Right. So, and then everyone says,
So kind of specifically with
Yes.
Caspar, is like there's a couple of things Caspar did in like the second issue or the third issue, and I was like, oh, you could do that then. Like he did the whole bit in the pyramid with like a load of like posters on the wall. I never asked for that. I would never ask for that. That's too much work. And it was like, oh no, you're interested in this stuff. In which case, I started like throwing suggestions in, and especially the stuff involving Eliza or Masumi in terms of like, especially Masumi's kind of, is she going to lose it kind of like pacing? I give a lot of suggestions as in, here's some ideas for you. Like the whole sex scene around the edges during the dip into hell during the second Summer of Love in issue 9. That was like, here's a thrown idea. You know what I mean? There's an element of like, I'm not going to tell you the execution, but here's an idea you might want to play with because you might find it creatively interesting. That's the Caspar. Caspar is really likes being set challenges, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie likes places to play. You know what I mean? That's like, that's, yeah. I've never thought about that in that way until that sentence.
Is there a lot of do you do a lot of outside the script collaboration with Stephanie as well? Like, is that the key maybe to good collaboration? Is that like, okay, you've got, you know, it's like putting an address in on Google Maps, right? It's going to give you 4 different ways to get there. And I figured that's the script, and whichever path you take feels like it's done all outside the margins.
Yeah. There's less specific chatting with Stephanie. As in what Stephanie generally goes, she goes off and does the thing, then comes back. And that, is this okay? Like, but she does do roughs, so I do like notes on the roughs. And then like, it's mainly like notes on PDF and that kind of, so it's much more like a semi-formal thing with Stephanie, but we talk every day. You know what I mean? So, and like, it's also not no talk. Another thing with Stephanie, I haven't done with either Caspar or Jamie ever, is that Stephanie came over and we hung out and talked about Die for like, a few days. You know, we had a summit. You know, when we were doing Die Loaded, like we pitched characters and we talked about ideas and stuff she'd want to work on and stuff she'd like to draw. You know what I mean? So like Stephanie is really involved. They're all co-creators, but Stephanie shapes what Die is in a way, not as whilst Jamie and Caspar about the execution of this idea. As in, these are pop stars as gods. And they, you know, it's not like they're ever tweaking the plot though. Mm-hmm. You know, they both have like, I mean, they both have, as in, what's the word? Veto is the best way of putting it. Or like, no, Kieron, that's a bad idea. Like, and that rarely is used, but like, there's also a comment. Okay, there's also the tweaking stuff, but the basic meta structure is mine. I think I don't like saying that, but I think it's true. Whilst Die is not as true. As in Die is much more like, yeah, there's stuff which is really mine, but there's a lot of stuff which definitely just summons up. I'm pausing it, it's not true, because I completely give stuff to Caspar in terms of like, there's so much like other world building, but it's like, it feels like Stephanie gets her fingers in an earlier stage than either Caspar or Jamie did. Mm-hmm. Like they both kind of came in when I sent them the fucking Bible. Sorry, they both came in when I sent the Bible to them. You know, like with some ridiculous document, and then that, of course, is also the start of a conversation. Anyway,
right? Okay, all right. So let's talk about Power Fantasy, because this is a book. Not that it doesn't seem like you're having fun with any of your other books, but this book feels like you're having an exceptional amount of fun with. Is that? Am I reading into that, or is that
when it's like it just feels like I describe it almost like a graduation class. It's like the idea that this is everything I've loved about superhero comics a bit. Mm-hmm. Like what I like about superhero comics is basically this stuff. It's like I like philosophy. I like politics with a small p. I like politics with a big P as well. But like the actual personal politics, I like what is superhero? What is ethics for? I like talking. I like the interactions. I like romance. I like, you know, all the kind of stuff I think is really cool is just the power fantasy. In that kind of, and one of the cool ideas, let's just do it. I use the word I almost thought I describe it as novels, but like a specific kind of novel. I wanted to do, you know, I also think about it like the bespoke. Yeah, so it's a bit late. So I'm trying to actually dig down here. Here is the thing. Like the same way, you know, Wick Div, here's the world you can join in. Here's a story for 51 issues. That's what the power fantasy is. The idea of here is a really solid world you can lose yourself in. And we've made it for you. And it will excite you. And that's the thing about like, I definitely find it fun. Like, it's almost like there's the excitement of sharing it. And especially it's like, the thing with the power fantasy especially is I wanted to do an ongoing book. And that kind of like, let's do something that works like an ongoing. Like, here's this, we're revealing all this stuff. We're dropping big timeline graphs. Here's this thing you thought was true isn't true. Now, here's this other thing. Oh no, they've just made out. Right. Like, that's an ongoing comic. Like, the idea is fun. I mean, we said it's like, it kind of emerged from the X-Men in the same way that Wick Div emerged in Young Avengers.
Right.
Like, and I think Power Fantasy is closer to that Immortal X-Men than Wick Div was to Young Avengers. But that's still kind of the vibe. In that kind of, the idea of these, it really, I suppose it is one of my love song to at least a part of an idea of what that is. Yeah. I know. It's like, I generally think I'm never going to write a superhero comic properly ever again after the Power Fantasy. Like, in that, or at least of this sort. I don't think I can do this sort of comic ever again. Because I think this is like my trade in that way. It's like, all this stuff is great. I love this. And also this, I was chatting to you earlier with Caspar, but all the stuff that we have planned in the future. It's one of the bits where like every issue of this arc is going to be what? Like issue 11 was big. I think every issue of this arc is something that big. Like I would have to go through 12 does 13? Yeah, 13 definitely does. Oh yeah, 14. I mean, all of them. Like, honestly. Like, and then of course we hit 16 and that's the biggest thing. That's kind of it's comics.
That's it, right?
This is a podcast. I'm waving my arms in the air. That's the kind of thing about Power Fantasy. The reason why I want to do it is the idea is this is completely credible. This is always a nominated book. It's also a banger. That is actually that's why I really felt comics needed. I felt comics needed a smart pop comic that can get people coming back every month. And and if we're having fun, hopefully you are too.
In this book, especially the way that you balance satire and the politics and character drama and not only like character building, but in some cases character removal. How do you balance that? Right? Like is this an instance where like you need to see the plan wider to make sure it all fits? Because it feels like the perfect, like a perfectly solved Sudoku puzzle almost every time.
Thank you. That's very kind. I like, there is a big, this is kind of like stuff I've done before in terms of the structural stuff. This is me using all those structural lessons, but like it's a more sophisticated version of it, because like Wick Div was winged in lots of ways. There's definitely an awful bit there's definitely bits of the Wick Div timeline where I've kind of like, oh god, I've got a hammer to make this work. Well, so we had talk about swagger. We did the timeline with which issue numbers in issue 3. Yep. You know what I mean? The idea, in issue 12 we're going to do this, and like we're not. I mean, I could have put some more in there, and I decided not to, just because I needed a bit more wiggle.
Right.
But like there's that level of precision to it. And also that involved knowing what happened in 971. But the thing about timelines, there's a really interesting game called Microscope. Microscope is a narrative game, and it's based around the idea of, I'm going to really paraphrase the game, so apologies to the designer. You say, okay, this is a game about this period of history. This is a story about the rising of the first dragon to the death of the dragon emperor. And then, great, now we know the story. And then people just add scenes on the way. And they go, okay, and at this point in the timeline, the breeding of the diamond dragon gave birth to the warp storm. Great. And then someone else puts something later, the end of the warp storm. And the point is, but you can, there's no end to a timeline. You can always zoom in between the gaps. And that's what the Power Fantasy is. The idea that I had to do enough planning to work out where everyone was across all the period of times, when they were born, when they were about, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But as long as if you've done enough of that to pin down the structure, you still can drill down infinitely. Like that kind of, we know that Etienne was in New York in 1966. Like, where? For how long? What gigs did he see? You can always drill closer and discover more about these people, which is why hopefully it feels alive. But as long as you've got those big structures in place, it gives you the trick of being like cathedral-like. But I'm also thinking about episodic structure of Power Fantasy. We return to the ongoing nature of it, as in, okay, this episode is about this. and trying to, and some episodes are focus ones, as in we can try to go across time, and other ones we kind of, move between the cast more. And that's just, they're the hard ones. Like the idea of how they're quite satisfying because, like, especially having done it for a while, I write the power fantasy really fluidly. Like I write them and I just write the scenes almost in any order, whichever I feel. Then I sequence them. And then I remove stuff and like, okay, an extra page here. But the idea of like issue 13, when that comes out, that's one with almost the entire cast in, and they're all having significant beats, and we've got to do it as a kind of the falling dominoes of it all, which is really hard. Like, and it's like, and it's petrifying to write because you say it all comes together in the end, but it's a leap of faith because, like, I'm not sure. Like, up until you, like, it's like if you're building you put this thing, and if a brick is missing, it's all going to fall down, and you don't really know if you don't have enough bricks until you put the last brick in, and then you suddenly, it's that. But it's fun. Well, this is you mentioned having the fun of it. That's a real great technical challenge, especially because what's enough to make people care? This is one of the things people get kind of it's like caring as a trait. It's one of those ironies that if you actually put too much in a comic, people will care less about what happens. So if you actually put less stuff, they'll care more about the stuff that actually is there. It's like there's someone like Brian K. Vaughan. He's really good. If you actually look at how little stuff happens in some of his comics, in terms of actual plot beats, it's fascinating. But the fact he's judged them all to land. And if you actually put more in, people would feel less. So it's the irony that, he could get through Saga twice the speed if he did 8-panel grids. But like, he's not going to do that. Why would he do that?
So it's crazy you say that because to me, I feel like that's why anime works so well, right? Like nothing happens in episodes of Dragon Ball Z, but you're stuck there and whatever. And to me, that is always infinitely more interesting than where I feel, say, things like television. Like for whatever reason, we've television seasons are now 8 episodes and we're out kind of thing, where it used to be, we used to have more room in 22 episode seasons and whatever. And I think like you don't get that anymore. And so I totally agree with that because like you're able to compress and expand as you need. And that's where I think that's why the tense moments really hit. And then like, and because you've given the time to build and then boom. Right. And that's one of the things I love about the power fantasy.
Thank you. But that's definitely true. Because I think I'm by nature a compressor. And that's that's one of my problems. Like people who like me are kind of people who do like frankly, my ADHD download of it. Like, so like trying to actually get the paint scene land, especially because it's a book that runs off tension because it's not a fight scene. I can't do the release a classic comic does. Can I keep people interested in by just that? And this is we come back to Caspar. Like so much of like issue 11. We're sort of pitching. Okay, we need to see this closing and the things being placed. Can we cut between all these things? This is a solution. You may want to add more panels. I always say at the front of any script as an artist, please add more panels if you want. Caspar's panel ladder. So yeah. Absolutely. So I'm glad the pacing was, and so much of that. This is the reason why you give it to Caspar as well, because he can make stuff feel longer by how he uses panels, his storytelling. He's really smart. He's an incredible storyteller.
Yeah. I want to talk about the cast for a second of the book. These are characters with very strong personalities. Were you surprised with who some of the fans have like latched onto as their favorites?
Not really. I don't think we always knew a line.
Like, no, Jim, it's all by design.
Also, like, I don't think anyone hasn't latched. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think anyone is the poor child who no one loves in that way.
Well, right. I guess more what I'm asking is, maybe the reasons why they like those characters.
I mean, a lot of so much is this is the getting to what Caspar really brings. Any artist, the specifics. Because I was saying this to someone earlier, is that you kind of know. Actually, this is one of the awful things about comics is you can be in a situation where you know the book isn't going to work because, and it's like, or this character we've just made up isn't going to break out because you'll see it because the design isn't right, and you haven't got time to go and do another design, and the artist isn't getting it in the same way, you know this character isn't never going to be what you were kind of hoping it would be. It's the opposite, you know, and then you get someone like Caspar. Or like your Jamie, or like the, you know, the kind of the moments, like there's definitely things I realize, people will love this, like just any outfit Etienne wears. I see the moment when Heavy, because Heavy was probably the character me and Caspar bounced back and forth most, actually.
Okay.
The floating spliff, when suddenly, like, I mean, I said stuff could be floating around, and when Caspar went, I guess a spliff, and that's perfect. Like, you know, suddenly that's literally, and in my head, it's the cosplayable moment. You know, they kind of like someone attaching a spliff with a wire or whatever near him. Get a dressing gown on, like, you know. So it's that kind of stuff. It's like kind of the bits you see and they say. I mean, like, it was very always clear that lives would be big in that way. As in, we've got the hot demonic goth girl. Yes, this is the sort of thing that people like in comics,
right?
I say with love. And of course,
but you said, but like even introducing a character, right? Like Heavy's kid, right?
Yes. Oh man, right? He's so, oh man, Kid Ignition for him. It's like he's funny. Like honestly, like that's one Caspar thing. Like the idea, of course, Caspar was a '90s teenager, so right. he's really getting into the kind of the new metal. Oh my god, like oh man, that's the worst teaser I feel bad about. And like, oh no. Well, you know, this Limp Bizkit fan has the power to destroy the world. It's like, I'm not sure he would have liked Limp Bizkit. I think Kid Ignition is trying to be a bit cooler than Limp Bizkit. I say, with all the love to Limp Bizkit fans in the audience, I'm specifically talking semiotics. I can't believe I just said that. It's like I'm assuming we knew. It's like, it's one of those bits like,
right.
Yeah. It's literally like what people pick upon. Actually, my favourite thing about them, and this is what does surprise me. Surprise is the wrong word. Delight me or interest me. Like when people say who the villain is, I'm like,
you can't.
Interesting. So, no, they can.
Well, I mean, you can. You're right. You can. But who you pick tells everything about you.
Yeah, and which is it's one of the books. Things that's absolutely about the book. It's specifically how I structured it. These are basically 6 people who believe different ways of being a good person. This is a philosophical book about what is powerful. I don't want to,
but also each issue kind of feels like an Enneagram test.
Yeah, I mean, it's like frustrated. Like there's so much there, and I think all of them are teasing them apart. At least I said this in one of the back matters recently that I think they're all I think they're all basically good people. I mean, there's problems with them. They're all not perfectly good, but they're on the larger scale of human life. They're basically good. Because I didn't want to do a book about awful people for an ongoing. I sort of said, we know what awful people do with power. We live on Earth. But like, and the awful thing about the book is, past a certain scale, power is fundamentally corrosive. That's the horrible thing which is built into the book. And Etienne says it in the first issue. You know, like, we really shouldn't be here. Unfortunately, we are. Now what? Yeah, and that's what I really kind of find interesting. And then I said, especially because the way the book goes, it'll tease apart the contradictions, the people problem, you know, all these kind of things in terms of, and I kind of hope they'll get some kind of synthesis. That's, you know what I mean? Like, it's, I have hope. This is spoilers for my kind of stories. My stories tend to start with characters really very low, and then I beat them up for a very long time, and I build towards a moment of transcendence where they get over their ass. That's Phonogram, that's Wigdiv, that's Die. You know, because it's my Catholic history mugging me. Because there must, on some level, I think humanity has fallen, but I still believe that we can be better. You know, and that's the kind of like, there's a real fundamental belief that we can be better as a species, and a kind of despair at how we are. That's kind of what I've suddenly gone, okay, I've suddenly remembered why people think I'm the Michelangelo corner of the triangle. But, you know what I mean? But yes, that's the power fantasy. It's like this, it's like the further you go into it, the more you go, oh, right, okay. And I really hope, you know, we get as far as we want to go with it. Because Caspar was saying earlier that, I just downloaded like issue 30 to 34 or something, on a train on the way to the airport. They just said bye. And it's just suddenly like me talking for half an hour about all this stuff. It's also, I'm incredibly lucky that I get to do what I do. Like, you know, it's, the moment when writing is going good is better than anything else in lots of ways. That's the that's the incredible moment. Because you don't know if anything's really good. Okay, how to phrase this one. When you actually write something you know is good, it's good. It's one of those things that it's not even a matter of question. There's lots of other sorts of writing you do, but when you're genuinely on fire, it's like it's an undeniable like thing, which is a really interesting purity to stuff. Yeah, and the power fan. I'm trying to think where in the power fantasy sits in the threefold corner. That it's a pretty well balanced book. Honestly, as I've said, it's that's the kind of
but that's why I think it. But that's why I think it works, and I think that's that's the appeal. But I think for that, Kieron, you've been so incredibly gracious with your time. I can talk about this forever, and we're going to have to do this again soon. But this has been a blast, and this is a great place to end. And so thank you. And if you're, depending on when you're listening to this, Power Fantasy 12 is about to come out, or it may have come out already. Pick it up, read it, read all of the books we talked about today. Go pick up Phonogram, go pick up Wick Div, go pick up Die, and all that stuff. Because
we call them giants.
We call them giants, right? Yeah, all of that. And you can see now when reading those, all of the things Kieron had to go through in producing them. So Kieron, man, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jim. This has been a delight.
Well, that does it for another episode of Let's Talk Comics. Thank you for listening to what ended up being a bit of a bonus-sized episode. A little longer than we usually go, but super full of crazy, interesting stories nonetheless. Big thank you to Kieron to talking about all of his work, but also the Power Fantasy and the Return of Die. But I also, like I said, it was a ton of fun to hear him go behind the scenes a little bit and talk about his philosophy and at the end of the day, just honestly reminding us why creator-owned comics just hit different. But now it's your turn. If you dug the episode, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening to the show. Drop a rating, leave a review, because it really does help us climb those charts. And like I said, screenshot the episode, share it on socials, tag everyone, let's spread the love and get more people reading these killer books. So don't forget, new arc of the Power Fantasy is hitting shops real soon. Die is on its way back. You're not going to want to miss what Kieron and his partners have in store for you. This has been another episode of Let's Talk Comics. I'm Jim Viscardi. Keep reading comics so we can keep talking about them. Catch you later.